There's a Carl Jung, carl-jung.net is basically the compilation of all of Jung's work, and they have an entire page dedicated to the idea of the collective unconscious. So this says, archetypes constitute the structure of the collective unconscious. They are psychic, innate dispositions to experience and represent basic human behavior and situations. Thus, mother-child relationship is governed by the mother archetype, father-child by the father archetype. Birth, death, power, and failure are controlled by archetypes. The religious and mystic experiences are also governed by archetypes. The most important of all is the self. Here's what Jung argued. Jung argued that on a deep psychic unconscious level, that all human beings on the planet are tapped in to the collective unconscious. And that furthermore, our individual lived experiences influence the collective unconscious so that it is actually a constant developing thing that feeds on the consciousness of sentient creatures. That was his argument. So that's interesting. And so he argues that these archetypes are these structures, are the structures of the collective unconscious. And this was his explanation for why all cultures and all places and times have a mother archetype.
Could an archetype be like the idea of like the divine world, like deities and...
Yeah, although each deity would be a different archetype.
Okay.
Right? So here are some common archetypes. And they're located in sort of these different psychological arenas. So the idea of freedom, the idea of ego, the idea of order, organization as a response to chaos, and then social archetypes. So we have this idea of the rebel, the explorer, the creator, the hero, the wizard, the sage, the ruler, the innocent. You see how this one played out a lot in modern television. The citizen, the carer or nurturer, the lover, the jester or trickster. So these are sort of common archetypes. Now how they manifest in different cultures is going to depend. So for example, there are two different but very common trickster figures in American Indian myth. Do you know what they are?
One's a coyote.
Raven and coyote. So obviously ravens are birds and coyotes are not. But and so they're very different, but they both fulfill this idea of the trickster. In Japan, it is the fox that is the trickster figure. And so, so you get these very different tricksters. Yeah.
Isn't I just remember from my childhood hearing stories of a Nazi.
Oh yeah.
Isn't he like the trickster for most African?
Yes, and we're gonna read a couple of stories, at least one, I think two, actually, about a Nazi. Yes, in the trickster section. Yeah. So we also use archetypes, and if you're not a Joss Whedon fan, I can't talk to you anymore. We also use archetypes to look at modern storytelling. So this is one of the ways that myth continues to influence our lives. And so in most of Joss Whedon's work, you actually find these archetypes plus a few more that sort of pop up here and there. But you always have this idea of the lost hero, this person who has very, very high ideals, but is forced into living in this environment that he doesn't understand. You have the father figure, the wise sage. You have the weapon, and in Joss Whedon's world, that is almost always female. He likes female weapons. And then you have the warrior. And so the one who will compromise every other aspect of their life in order to fight the good fight, right? And so almost all of our, actually, the Avengers universe is, of course, totally based on archetypes, loosely in many cases, but is based on these pretty ancient archetypes. But we also have more modern archetypes, too. If you think of modern sitcom world, the father archetype in modern sitcoms is pretty interesting and very similar across the board. And is often a buffoon type of figure, which is pretty interesting. So, we're going to to do an exercise with archetypes.
Yes.
So, what you need in front of you is a writing surface. This is not to be handed in, but it's nice if it's sort of a blank page. Start fresh.
You might have done it. You might have.
I got my colored pencil.
You got your colored pencil? You got your colored pencil? You got colored pencils.
Oh.
He's cutting it close.
He got the dirty look, though, did you see?
Yep.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a series of prompts. When I give you each prompt, I'm going to give you 1.5 to 2 minutes to simply write what comes into your head. It doesn't have to be in sentences. It doesn't have to be correctly spelled. Don't worry about grammar. Just write the images that come into your head. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so imagine that you wake up, open your eyes, and you're walking through a forest. As you are walking through the forest, you find a key. You walk on through the forest and you come to a structure. You're going to leave the structure behind and continue on through the forest until you come to a body of water. up and you notice one or more bears. The next thing that you encounter is one or more monkeys. The very last thing that you encounter is a wall. So we'll just take another minute if you want to read back up through what you've written. And if there's anything else that you need to say about any one of these things, if we moved on before you were finished, we'll just take a minute to look back up through everything. We may have done it. Okay, so what we have is these are all archetypes that are specific to our culture. They all represent something else. What we have engaged in is called the Jungian myth-making exercise. And so theoretically, you have just written your own personal myth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and ask just 2 or 3 people to share what they wrote about each one, and then I'll tell you what each one represents. I'll do my best to do a little bit of interpretation. Sometimes people throw things at me where I'm like, yeah, I have no idea what that means. Okay, so who wants to describe or read their forest, about their forest? Soren.
So I said trees, redwood, mist, grass, bare feet, green, nature, animal sounds, cool, moist, noise of birds. That's it.
Okay, is it daylight or nighttime?
Daylight.
Daylight.
But it's like a hazy, like really like a
Sure,
fog.
like misty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really big trees.
Right. Are you on a path?
Kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like it's like a
It's not a well-worn path.
yeah.
Got it. Okay, good.
I'm on a path.
You're on a path? Okay,
Yeah.
please, share yours.
There's a path going down the center, and heavy pine trees canvassing, making
Okay.
a tunnel. You can tell it's daytime, but it's very dark.
But it's dim.
Yeah.
So it's not like the
but
sun
yeah,
is
it's just a path going straight down.
And it's
Maybe
straight.
a little bit of
How far can you see?
a few hundred yards, maybe.
Okay, so a ways, but
Or-
not like out of.
I don't know. Yeah, the length of a football field.
Okay, okay, sure. But not like out of sight, right? Okay. Anyone else?
I immediately imagined like a wolf that I'm following.
Oh,
And
interesting.
It's like dark and it's like leading me somewhere.
Okay, is it daylight or nighttime?
It's dark.
It's dark.
It's nighttime.
But obviously you can see. Are you following a path?
No.
You're following the wolf.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, did your forest have any animals, birds, insects, anything like
No.
that? No. You have a very specific animal.
I can just hear them.
You can just hear them. Okay. So, the forest represents. It's really a reflection of the self archetype, but it's specific to how you view your life.
Awesome.
What? So, so if we are on a path, it usually means that we have some sort of plan for our life. We have goals and objectives. Whether or not we accomplish them is entirely separate, right? But we have an idea of where we're going, so we're following a path. Sometimes our paths are a little bit more, wandering or vague, where we're sort of, Sometimes, was there anyone who was like pushing their way through a thicket? Okay, yep. And so sometimes our lives feel like we're pushing our way through a thicket, where we're sort of forcing things to happen. We don't entirely know where we're going. We may have a variety of responses to that. So some people are like, thickets are awesome, which is great. They're living their life the way they want to be. Other people are like, oh my God, this feels so constricting, which probably means that you need to imagine yourself with a machete and clear away some of the bullshit, right? And so, forest represents life. Okay,
Yeah, I know it.
we don't have time to do everyone's.
I just have a question.
Okay, we have two questions.
Yeah.
Wait, what is your name? Jessica.
Yeah.
Jessica and then Isabel.
Okay, so something weird is that just for the forest part, like when I was walking through,
Mm-hmm.
it almost felt like a lucid dream,
Oh.
but the rest of the things didn't.
So there was this shift that occurred.
It was really
Yeah,
easy to
yeah.
visualize the forest.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
I was slowly, it was almost like I was like floating, like I was moving through it, but
Interesting.
then like with everything else it felt like normal.
Like, Well, in some ways,
I just wrote down.
this is the basic foundation through which we interpret everything else, right? Isabel, what was your question?
Don't
I
overthink
was
it.
wondering what you would think the presence or lack of animals in it would be.
Ooh.
Yeah, honestly, the best people to interpret the meaning of this is the people writing it. So I would ask you, so what do you think that it means? The other thing is that, which is a very psychological response, right? What do you think it means? But the other thing is that some of our lives are very full of life. Other people, pets, children, people we're caring for. Like and other people are, more introverted. And so our lives, in reality, are probably filled with friends and family and pets and whoever, but we don't consider them sort of primarily, right? They're more on the fringe. So some people would say that the presence or absence of animals, it might indicate an introvert-extrovert thing. Or it could indicate that somebody just really likes animals. It could indicate that the wolf is probably your totem, which we'll learn about next week.
I don't particularly like wolves.
That doesn't mean that it's not your totem. Yeah. Okay, who wants to share about their key? Let's have some different sharers. Gabe, you haven't shared.
I wrote, I see the key. I grab it. Examine it. What is it for? I know it is for something. It is worn, but still in good condition. I will keep it for later or give it to someone else along the way.
Oh, interesting. So you take it with you.
Yeah.
And how big is it?
I imagine like an old medieval key. Like it's really basic, really like worn and
Okay, so sort of antique, kind
yeah,
of large, not
yeah,
like a
kind of
husky
large,
today.
but
Sure.
enough, small enough that I could like put it in my pocket
Okay.
and not have it like wear me down or like
Sure, not be a burden.
yeah.
Got it. Key? Other keys? Yes.
I just put random. I mean, I didn't really describe it or anything. I just couldn't really picture it.
You couldn't really picture it.
Yeah.
And so, did you pick it up and take it with you, or did you just
Just look down and left.
looked down and left?
I did something completely different for all of them. I like heard the word and then I just kept thinking about different like things that connected to it.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, part of this is like, because
There's no wrong way
these
to
don't
do it.
mean actual keys, right? They can
Right.
mean a bunch of different things.
Yeah, because I think after you showed Joss Whedon, I thought about Buffy and her sister Dawn, who's the key.
Sure.
And then like
sure.
I kept going through that.
yeah, absolutely. So sometimes the key is a person, as Joss Whedon illustrated for us. Yeah, Alex.
So my key was like a skeleton key, but it was bronze and it was kind of dirty.
That's
and
what
it
I
was
got.
cold to touch.
And it was cold. Did you take it with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody? Who else just left the key? Just left it lying there, as opposed to take it with you. Okay, so the key represents intellect. This does not mean that if you can't imagine a key that you have no intellect. That's not what this means. So some of us are what we call intellectuals, right? And so some of us think, process all the time. And if you fill out a quiz on social media and you say, what weapon is your best weapon? You say, my brain. So people who really consider intellect as one of their defining characteristics tend to have large, ornate keys. People who may have a more emotional approach to life, or who may not necessarily use their own intellect, but like when faced with a problem, you might go ask your friends for advice, as opposed to be like, I'm going to solve this myself. So people have different ways of using their intellect in life. And so the key represents sort of how you use and understand your own intellect. An absence of a key could mean that you don't trust your own intelligence, which might be something to do some thinking around. And so it can be that you have all the intellect in the world, but that you don't trust yourself with it yet, or that you're searching, right, to figure out your sort of intellectual place in the world. Okay, structures. Yes.
So in my other rank, I did this cliff.
Okay.
Before me was a waterfall.
Yep.
And the waterfall and this other cliff kind of split. And it was this like monastery, temple.
Looking thing. Okay.
Yeah. Like,
how big was it?
it fit in the waterfall and it was gigantic.
Okay.
It had, like Buddhist statues and everything.
Okay, so gigantic. Okay, good. Did you go in?
No, I didn't.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I saw like a Mayan thing in the middle of my forest.
Oh.
It was like a ruined kind of temple. And
Yeah.
then I approached it and I wanted to see if the key would fit into the thing or if I
Sure.
could like get inside it somehow.
And did it?
I didn't because we moved on to the water next. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep walking. But
Okay.
I would have tried to get in there.
But you would have tried to get in there.
Yeah.
Okay, with the key.
with the key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw like a log cabin.
A
And
log
then,
cabin?
Yeah, then I did approach it and I did try the key.
And did it work?
Nope.
No. So you couldn't go in. Okay.
Yeah, like mine, I picked up the key and then it just kind of floated.
Uh huh.
And then the light came.
Oh.
Waterfall.
So yeah, please.
I saw like a small creepy cabin.
A small creepy cabin.
Yeah.
Did anybody live there?
No one
Did
lived
you go
there.
in?
No.
No, because it was creepy. Right, okay, fair enough.
No. What did they say how
Yeah, Lincoln.
I saw a hobbit home.
A hobbit home.
Nice.
Oh.
Very cool.
Did you go in?
I wanted to, but then we went to the water.
But then we moved on.
Yeah.
All right.
I
So
love how everybody was gonna look at it and they're like, off to the water.
the structure represents your childhood.
Oh, yikes! What? I saw like a creepy fence with like darkness inside. I had a great childhood.
So here's the bottom line. So if you have creepy structures or scary structures or something like that, This does not necessarily indicate that you had a bad childhood. And in fact, some people who did have bad childhoods do not have dark, creepy structures. Basically what it indicates is your current perception of where your childhood is located in your sense of self. Some of us, well, like when I did this myth, what I saw was sort of an old fallen down log cabin. And I walked through the forest and I was like, oh, somebody must have lived here once, and then kept right on going. And so what that indicates is that I did live in my childhood once, but I no longer do. I've moved on. Some of us have a very deep sense of our childhood as informing who we are as adults. Typically there, you're going to have a structure that you enter, or at least try to enter. Some of us want to enter the structure but can't. And in some way, this indicates that on some level, you're aware that you're no longer a kid, but sometimes it would be really nice to be a kid for a little while, right? Yeah.
What if I literally said the words, I don't know what's in there, but I don't want to know?
Then maybe it's time for you to move on from the childhood, right? I mean, just leave it. And so, I mean, some psychoanalysts would say, ooh, we need to explore this part of your psyche. So that's one possibility. Other psychologists would say, then move on. Yeah, leave it. Who cares? Move on. All right, water. This one's a fun one. So you have waterfalls. We know that. Anybody have any oceans? You had an ocean.
That's the one that I could actually envision. I saw sharks.
Sharks. Okay, so I assume that you didn't get in the ocean.
No, I was on a boat.
Okay, on a boat. Okay.
I had a shallow, I heard trickling, shallow, crystal clear river with majestic rocks and fish that are very friendly.
Oh, very friendly. Friendly fish. And you went in. Excellent. And was the water nice?
Yes.
Okay, great. Derek.
I had like a large pond, small lake.
Sure.
Kind of in a clearing in,
Yep.
the forest.
Yep.
Still there, yeah.
Okay. You've already spoken. You were nodding earlier, so I'm going to call on the other Zach.
I came across a small stream.
Yep.
Very clear water.
Yep.
I could probably jump across if I wanted to.
Okay.
Very, very small.
Did you touch the water?
No.
No. All right. Water is sexuality.
You didn't touch the water.
So the location that sexuality and our own sense of sexuality occupies in our life is what the water represents. And again, you determine what this means. And so some people have oceans. Oceans tend to indicate people who are pretty secure in whatever choice they've made regarding their sexuality. They're secure in that location. Sometimes there's scary things in the water, and that's true not just of oceans, but sometimes, in a couple of instances, the bears came leaping out of the water.
I had
We'll
the
get
bears.
there.
Oh, that would be a twist.
And so, our sexuality can have a sense of risk associated with it, right? There's all sorts of things to be concerned about sexuality, especially in a fairly puritanical culture such as ours. And so other people are very comfortable with it. Some people just sort of notice it and they're like, oh, what a nice little stream, but don't really interact with it very much. Other people like get in and wallow in it, right? And so that's fine too. One of the most interesting examples of this that I had was that one of my friends had this very organized water. It had a water wheel that was like grinding grain and like all very organized, right? And so when she found out that the water was sexuality, she was like, oh, of course, sex produces babies. And she was deep into the whole motherhood phase of her life. And so sex was functional for her, right? And so, water, sexuality. All right,
I had
bears.
a bridge over mine.
Makes me want to shit on bears.
Okay, bring on the bears.
I said, oh shit, like immediately.
Oh
when I
shit,
first-
right.
Well, I was like,
Sure.
oh shit. But then I kind of immediately look and see if the bears are angry, and I just look and see if there's cubs around. If there's no cubs, then I I just trust the bears to do their own thing.
Do
and
their
I
own
do
thing.
mine.
Trust the
Yeah.
bears.
Well, no, I just even in that I sat down because like my vision was like I had like the big pond, like it was like a big pond in the middle of the forest, and then the bears. Even once you added the bears and monkeys, I pictured them playing and chilling
Sure,
around this pond.
because that's where you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the
And
jungle.
I just sat down and I just chilled with the bears and the monkeys.
Okay. Oh, great.
So
And it was like, yeah, and it was like a Disney movie.
Cinderella over here.
Anybody
Ah,
else
no,
like
for real.
run up,
Love it.
play with the bears, friendly, happy bears? Any, yeah?
Well, I was in the lake.
Okay.
Like, I had to climb down a cliff to get in the lake, and I put my feet in, and then I look up and there are bears on the cliff.
And then what
I had the
happened?
same thing.
Well, monkey showed up.
Oh, and then the
The
monkeys
monkey
showed up.
showed up.
Yeah, what were you gonna say?
They had geckos and they were soft. They let me pet and cuddle with them. They talked about the life of a bear. And then the bears showed me where the monkeys are and said that they're in trouble in the air. And but not on the ground.
Okay.
They were rascals in the air, but not on the ground.
Okay, got it. So bears represent how we respond to danger.
I just
Oh,
look
that
at
makes
it
sense,
and
because I
know.
yeah, dude, for sure.
So, yeah,
First, mine was defense, fight or flight.
yeah, exactly.
I totally ran.
Absolutely.
I
So,
paused and was like,
Any
"This is legit."
response to danger, I mean, some are probably more practical than others, but the way that, it's sort of like the degree to which a sense of danger occupies our thoughts on a daily basis. And so there's also a practical response to danger. So the oh shit and run response is actually a totally reasonable response to danger. And so if there's something coming after you, run, absolutely. However, other people don't have that sense of danger. And so are much more interested, I mean, some people, sometimes when I do this, the bears are teddy bears.
Nice.
And so this is probably a person who doesn't have any real sense of danger in their life, which may or may not be practical for them. But they don't have any real, I mean, danger is not something they're worried about that much. Yeah.
Like, I guess in mine, the bears were just like kind of minding their own business,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I was just like fascinated and watching.
Sure, absolutely. And so that is also a
Yeah,
response
exactly.
to danger, is you keep an eye on it. You see what it's gonna do. You don't necessarily approach. I mean, that's a totally
But there's
rational response
no
to
need to
danger.
run away from the bears if the bears are just chilling.
Yeah, if the bear's just chilling out, you let them chill over here, you chill out over here, it's all fine and happy. Yep. Yeah, Karen.
What if my bears and my monkeys were like staring at me, but with a concerned look in their eyes?
I had the same thing.
Did you have something
I
similar?
had a large male just staring at me, and he
Right.
was really grizzled.
Were you afraid?
Now we were just kind of looking at each other.
You weren't afraid?
I was on guard,
Sure.
but
Yeah, so I mean, we'll get to monkeys in a minute, but I mean, if your response to the bear wasn't fear, then
I
that,
was like worried, like why are they concerned?
right. Which actually is also a response. Like if you think about if somebody expresses concern for you and you're not feeling like you're in danger, you're like, then you become concerned. You think maybe somebody else is seeing something that you've missed, right? And so that could be one possible interpretation. Yeah, Lincoln.
I said I was preparing to use my key as a weapon.
Okay. Use your brain to solve the danger, right? And so, yeah, so when presented with danger, your intellect turns on. What is the rational, reasonable thing to do in this situation? That's how I would interpret it.
Okay, so if you did this during different parts of your life when different things are going on, you're gonna have totally different results, right?
Theoretically, there is, you can really only do this exercise cold once.
Yeah,
Because you're gonna think about how it was.
You're gonna think about how it was before, and that's gonna influence. Now, that may be okay. And so if there's like 20 years between doing it, that would probably be okay. But if you do it again next year, your memory of this experience is gonna influence it.
Damn,
Good
I was
question.
biased.
Okay, monkeys.
I want to share my monkeys.
The water is just
Do you wanna share your monkeys?
Yeah, it was simple. There were two.
Two?
One was climbing the tree and one was looking down at me.
Okay, and how did you feel about the monkeys?
Curious.
Sure, okay, yep. Karen's monkeys joined the bear and staring at her with a concerned look. Okay, Yeah.
I guess mine were just, they came down from like the trees behind me and they just started like kind of messing / playing with me and like pulling my stuff out of my backpack and whatnot.
And did you find this entertaining or annoying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, a little of both. All right.
When I thought of monkeys, I thought about being in the rainforest and sipping on pina coladas.
Yeah, girl, I want to go to that for.
Absolutely.
So there were a bunch of them in the trees, and they were completely minding their own business. Seemed not interested in me at all. So I just kept going.
So you just kept going. Yeah.
Mine was really weird because the bears and the monkeys were both together. The bears were stuck in a tree, but the monkeys were making fun of them.
Okay, I like this. I like these. Okay, monkeys represent your friends.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so, some of us have friends who occasionally annoy us. They're still our friends, but they occasionally annoy us. Some of us, again, more introverted. So when we don't interact very much with the monkeys are suddenly sort of there, but we don't necessarily interact. In your case, I think your friends help you face danger.
It let her make fun for it.
Our friends make fun of you for it. Yeah, which is also a possibility. Which actually may be a way of helping you, though, right? Yeah. And so monkeys indicate sort of the presence of friends. So let's be honest now. Did anybody have any shit-throwing monkeys? You totally did.
Shot it right up.
Yeah, so that happens too. And, sometimes we have friends like that. And we may actually love them for that characteristic, or it may annoy us, depending. So, yeah, it depends on sort of how you feel about that kind of activity and behavior. All right, we've got a few minutes left. So walls. Big walls, little walls.
Okay, so my whole thing was like kind of like a fairy tale.
Sure.
Kind of a thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that's me.
Fairy tales are myths, by the way.
But my wall was like really long. It went all the way from like where I could see.
Yep.
And it was white brick, but it had like gold sparkles all over
Oh.
it. And I was like, oh no, there's a castle that I can live in behind it.
Perfect. Did you cross it? How tall was
I
it?
couldn't. It was like really, really tall.
Really, really tall.
Yeah.
Okay. Karen?
Mine was a gold wall, but my whole forest was dark, like in the afternoon when it's gonna rain. That's what
Okay.
it looked like.
Yep.
But my wall was really like big, and you couldn't see over it, and it was a gold wall, and there was like light shining down on it.
Oh, that sounds kind of pretty. Yeah. Richard?
Mine was like yellow sandstone and it encircled me.
Okay. Interesting. Did that concern you at all?
Well, I mean, it was like a height that if I really wanted to put effort, I could like vault over it.
Okay. So it wasn't like really trapping you. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, Jennifer.
Mine was a brick wall, and I couldn't get over, and I got frustrated, and I started kicking it.
Well, it is an obstacle in your way. Yeah, absolutely. Isabel.
Mine was like really long and really tall, and it was made out of like big rock, like bricks sort of things stacked on top of each other, and it was like so overgrown with like ivy and stuff that almost you wouldn't even see it. Like you went to push some stuff out of the way.
Oh, and then
bumped
there it
into
was.
Mine was like that.
Yeah.
But I had flip
Did anybody have any like little walls where they're just like, oh, stepped right over that?
Well, my wall was pretty much exactly like that, huge stone, like
Right.
big overgrown, just nature's taking it over, and I could see it kind of as far as I could go, but as soon as you said there was a wall, I immediately just kind of want to find a way around or over or through the wall.
All right.
I waited and meditated.
It's how we deal and understand death. The wall represents death.
That makes a lot of
So
sense.
mine
You
is
sit and
a little
contemplate.
wall where I think
That makes a lot of sense.
I overcome everything, even with distractions.
So, you think, or you believe, that you can intellectually understand death on some level. Would be what that would indicate. So, some walls are an obstacle, and the presence that death occupies in our psyches varies widely by from person to person. Some of us view it as sort of this mystery, right? This mysterious thing. Some of us view it a little bit as like a trap, but probably in your case, one that you can overcome. Or some people, death, they don't really think about it. It doesn't occupy much presence in their life at all. And so they just step over it and just like keep going. And so it indicates, our awareness of death. I have like 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Keep going, keep going.
And so here's the bottom line. Every culture has an archetype that represents these things, but this list is going to vary by culture. For example, if you're dealing with a nomadic tribe that lives in the Sahara Desert, therefore a forest is not going to represent life to them. What is? The desert.
Or an oasis.
Or an oasis, sure. And whether or not your desert has an oasis in it. You know, like all of those features of the desert would be what would represent their life. So the manifestation of the archetype varies by culture. But the archetypes themselves are mostly universal.
Okay.
All right, we're done.
That's
Have a good weekend.
like a class.
See you guys on Tuesday.
That is really weird.
Yeah,
I don't know how to feel about it.
it.